the most anticipated anime of the season, Campfire cooking in another world with my absurd skill. Season 2 has finally dropped. After a period of putting his servant through hell, Fel has gotten chubbier, and plumper. He's even starting to look a little pudgy. On a beautiful day in another world, Mukoda was just planning to cook for the crew as usual. But who would have thought that right after taking a bite of a pastry and a sip of his barley smoothie, some little baby dragon would swipe his entire plate of food. Looking closer, that tiny dragon turned out to be the legendary pixie dragon. Feeling that Mukoda's food was just a high quality, the pixie dragon took it upon itself to form a contract with him. And just like that, Mukoda's team recruited yet another food vacuum. But just before that, with a single lightning strike, Fel had wiped out all the poison spiders in the forest they were passing through. Mukoda looked on in disgust. You can actually eat this hideous junk. Because the battle ended way too fast, Sui was immediately disappointed she didn't get to play with the big bad wolf. Being a dedicated servant, Mukoda quickly rushed to comfort the little slime with immense patience. This preferential treatment annoyed Fel to no end. The main character was speechless with this godlike creature. It was obvious Fel was the one who was so hard to please, always demanding this and that, and only wanting meat, never veggies. Just look at Sui, the kid's never been a picky eater. Hearing this, Fel's face turned beet red, and he quickly changed the subject, declaring it was time to eat. Hurry up and serve your master the best food, servant. Immediately after, Mukoda quickly stashed all the poison spiders in his item box. After finishing up, he started preparing a ton of ingredients for crispy fried gyoza. First, he used his online supermarket skill to order gyoza wrappers and some special seasonings. Then, he chopped up some cabbage and chives to add to the dish to improve their digestive systems. Next came the marinating stage for the meat filling. All he had to do was knead the prepared ground meat with things like ginger, garlic, wine, salt, and pepper. After the meat was seasoned, he just had to mix in the prepared chives and cabbage, and it was good to go. Seeing Mukoda start to wrap the gyoza, Sui immediately insisted on helping her servant. Fel, watching them from behind, was drooling. Can you hurry it up a bit? I'm starving over here. Although Mukoda was very patient in his teaching, the gyoza that Sui wrapped still weren't exactly pretty. Soon after, with the teamwork of one human and one pet, Mukoda and Sui quickly finished wrapping to heaping plates of gyoza. He placed them in a pan, pan-fried them on medium heat until they were golden brown, then poured in a cornstarch slurry and covered the lid. When the pan started to make a crackling sound, the dish was almost done. He drizzled some sesame oil along the edge of the pan, then placed a plate on top and flipped it over. The fried gyoza with its crispy bottom was ready to be served, before Mukoda could even ask if they needed dipping sauce. Fel unleashed his hungry wolf pounces on prey move and started demolishing everything. In the blink of an eye, a supersized plate of fried gyoza was wiped clean by Fel. After an entire hour of serving the two food vacuums, Mukoda finally got to enjoy the delicious food he made himself. And when you're eating fried gyoza, you obviously can't go without a cold can of beer. But just as he took his first sip, he was suddenly lunged at by some creature. Terrified, Mukoda reflexively lifted it off him. Thanks to Fel's introduction, Mukoda learned this was a pixie dragon, a rare and hard-to-find creature. Seeing it stare intently at his piece of gyoza, Mukoda habitually offered it over. The moment it took its first bite, it was like a whole new world opened up for the pixie dragon. Its adorable appearance made him give it an affectionate smile. After a few bites, it was still craving more, so it flew next to Mukoda and acted cute in an incredibly endearing way. Utterly defeated, he had no choice but to give it the rest of his gyoza. But what Mukoda never expected was that after the little dragon ate until its belly was full, it formed a familiar contract with him faster than lightning. And just like that, the group had another mouth to feed. The main character was devastated. Willing to become someone's pet just for a meal? Are you for real right now? But to his surprise, it casually admitted it. Mukoda's food was the best thing the dragon had ever tasted in its life, which meant sticking with him guaranteed good food every day. Why wouldn't it sign a contract right away to enjoy this good life? Fel agreed with all four paws. After all, a human lifespan is only a few decades. For long-lived races like them, it was just a brief pleasure, but a damn good one at that. Right after, the pixie dragon wanted a name. Thinking it was just a small dragon, Mukoda decided to just call it Dorichan. This time, it was the pixie dragon's turn to be outraged. He never even asked if I agreed. I'm a full-grown dragon. How can you call me by such a lame name? But the system had already registered the info and it couldn't be changed. It was absolutely furious. What shocked Mukoda, however, was that Dora wasn't just 116 years old. The new member's power was absurdly strong. The only blemish was probably this name. As a Fenrir, Fel also remembered the old days when he was almost named Pochi, a common dog's name. The thought suddenly made him want to rage. Only Sui had no worldly desires, which is why Mukoda doted on her the most. After that, he returned to town to register Dorichan as his familiar. Coincidentally, the city's guild master had a request for Mukoda. Recently, the monsters in the forest had been acting strangely, preventing them from collecting silk from a certain type of magic insect there. Since this was the main ingredient for the town's specialty fabric, their business couldn't continue if they couldn't get it. Hearing the description of the insect monster, Mukoda felt it sounded familiar, so he directly took out the poison spider they had defeated earlier. Sure enough, The monster the guild master was talking about was this thing. What surprised him even more was that Mukoda had wiped out the source of all the trouble. Realizing the root of the commotion had already been handled by Fel, the guild master joyfully clapped him on the shoulder and told Mukoda that besides the valuable silk and shell, this spider's meat was also a super premium ingredient. Hearing this, the two food vacuums couldn't sit still. They started clamoring to eat it right away. Mukoda feigned refusal until Sui also expressed her desire to eat, at which point he happily agreed to spoil her. So, Mukoda asked the guild master to help butcher it. Very quickly, the spider monster was neatly processed. The guild master was even thoughtful enough to boil it in salt water, keeping the ingredient fresh. After eating, the shell could even be sold for money. The guy was quite excited and took a bite, discovering it tasted very similar to king crab. Maybe even better. The moment these words left his mouth, the food fanatics couldn't stay in their seats, and so, Mukoda decided to throw a crab party. There wasn't just crab fried rice loaded with meat, but also crab meat salad, steamed crab egg custard, and premium spring rolls laid out on the table. This was also a welcoming party for Dora-chan. Fel aimed for the steamed egg custard and took a huge bite. Instantly, savory juices covered its entire mouth. The ultimate combination of fresh and sweet crab flavor made it unable to stop. Sui preferred the more refreshing crab salad. Dora was head over heels for the crispy spring rolls. But when it comes to crab, grilling it whole is the best way to eat it. Mukoda had completely forgotten his fear and was treating the spider entirely as a crab. With the sizzling sound of the grilled legs, the three hungry familiars immediately surrounded him, determined to find out what other dishes their servant was hiding. Defeated, Mukoda had to bring out 3 crab legs for them to share. Getting to eat such delicious food, Dora exclaimed that following them was definitely the right choice. Mukoda was completely dumbfounded. It turned out this sly dragon had been keeping an eye on him for a long time. But while on its way to catch up, Dora accidentally got lost, and the monsters in the forest, sensing a powerful creature approaching, went into a frenzy out of instinct. Good grief, so you were the root cause of this whole farce commotion. Hearing this, the main character felt sorry for the unlucky spider, but what could he do? He had to suppress his feelings and eat every last bit. It would be a waste otherwise. That night, Mukoda took a relaxing bath and went to sleep soundly with Sui, but it seems he forgot something. The goddesses waiting for their offerings were boiling with rage. Should we slap this dude awake to make him fulfill his sacred duty? The next morning, Mukoda brought the pile of shells to the guild master. He also gifted him some of the prepared crab legs, which the guild master loved. Seeing this, Mukoda decided to gift him something else and accidentally pulled out the earth dragon. That Fel had defeated long ago. Because he felt it was a huge pain, he had kept it in his item box, waiting for a way to deal with it. Since he was here, Mukoda told the guild master his troubles. The old man's eyes went wide in shock. You have to understand, the value of an earth dragon could buy an entire powerful nation. Luckily, he knew someone very knowledgeable about the dragon race, the guild master of the Doran dungeon, City's Adventurers Guild, Elrond. The only thing is, that old man is a bit eccentric. Getting the news, Mukoda decisively set off for the city of Doran. However, on the goddess's side, all 4 of them were livid. The deadline for offerings was approaching, and that dude still hadn't sent them anything. Just as they were furiously complaining about the main character, this scene was witnessed by 2 other gods. It was likely the god of war and the god of smithing, smiling deviously. No doubt about it, the number of people Mukoda had to make offerings to just increased by 2. After a long journey, the squad finally sets foot on the outskirts of the dungeon city of Doran. The big boss wolf, Fel, is practically vibrating with excitement. He hopes there's something in the city worth conquering and is itching for a good old brawl with some new monsters just to get that adventure feeling back. Baby slime Sui pops out of his bag, doing a little flex to remind everyone that he's super strong too, and wants in on the fiery combat with the big boss. However, the squad's resident coward, our human servant, has zero intention of setting foot in any dungeon. The dude just wants to chill, cook, sleep, and do other similarly relaxing things. Baby dragon Dora-chan agrees, mentioning they should focus on other matters, like, for example, meeting the guild master named Elrond to ask about getting that earth dragon carved up. The moment he hears that, Fel finds his new true love and does a complete 180. Getting to feast on dragon meat prepared by the master chef Mukoda? What could possibly be better? And just like that, the legendary beast shoots off toward the city like a rocket, with Mukoda on his back, screaming helplessly at the terrifying speed. Approaching the main gate, the group sees a ridiculously long line of people waiting to be checked by the soldiers. The fact that they'll have to waste a good chunk of time just to get in does not sit well with Fel. He immediately comes up with a much smarter idea. Just hop the wall and skip the whole entry process. But Mukoda shuts that down instantly. He's dead certain they get hauled off to jail for life if they try that genius move. Out of options, our main character's crew has no choice but to begrudgingly wait in line. However, everyone in the queue is scared out of their wits when they see the super duper VIP pro beast standing behind them. The commotion forces the guards to step in. When they see the Fenrir next to Mukoda, they realize this guy is no ordinary person. The soldiers ask if he has come to the city at this time for some urgent business. Mukoda is completely flustered by the sudden question. He tries to explain that he's here to see the guild master and assures them he has no shady intentions, showing them his adventurer card. Before the guard can make a decision, a pretty boy golden-haired elf shows up and declares Mukoda is his esteemed guest. This pretty boy is none other than Elrond, the guild master of the dungeon city Doran. He's heard a lot of interesting things about Mukoda from Rolf. Just as Elrond is about to greet Mukoda, his eyes lock onto the little pixie dragon perched on the man's shoulder. For some reason, this leaves him shocked, speechless. Before explaining, Elrond leads Mukoda and his 3 precious pets to his office. There, he treats Dora with special care above all others, offering it a seat on a strange branch made from wood infused with incredibly pure mana. However, Dora couldn't care less and just plops down next to Mukoda. This gives the guild master another massive shock. Turns out, he thought the noble pixie dragon species only liked to sit on such branches. He jots down this precious data, hoping that if he ever meets another pixie dragon, he can befriend it with this information. Whatever, the guy's a little nuts, but as long as he carves up that earth dragon for us, we're good. The guild master then offers Mukoda a cup of tea and, once again, gives special treatment to Dora-chan. He has prepared mana-infused flower nectar for it, just as the books described. Elrond looks like an addict waiting impatiently to see what Dora will do. Will it drink the nectar or demand regular tea like its master? Dora understands it's being used as a lab rat and feels incredibly annoyed. It immediately turns its head away to show its anger, which is just adorable. Must record this useful info immediately. What surprises the guild master the most is that the royal library has documents stating that the main diet of pixie dragons is mana and farce flower nectar. He wonders if those documents are completely wrong, since the little dragon in front of him couldn't be bothered. While thinking of how to get more accurate knowledge, his eyes suddenly light up as he remembers Mukoda is here to get a dragon carved up. He's eager to see the monster and leads the group to the warehouse. As they enter the room, a man with a head that could land a few planes appears and announces that Elrond has a meeting with the Merchants Guild in the afternoon. The guild master, of course, wants to ditch the meeting since he's busy with an important guest, but the man won't take no for an answer. Luckily, they still have some time. Everyone quickly gathers at the warehouse, and Mukoda casually pulls the earth dragon out of his item box, seeing the powerful monster. Elrond feels a chill run down his spine, but it only lasts for a second because now he's completely mesmerized by its magnificence. Hurry up and butcher it, Genie. What we need is dragon meat, and lots of it, for the next meal. After carefully jotting down the preliminary data of the earth dragon, Elrond once again asks Mukoda about Dora-chan's diet. Our main character explains that this pet eats a bit of everything while traveling with them, but the weirdo still asks Dora again to confirm if its species has a specific diet. Seeing the two whispering, Elrond is baffled because he had no idea a familiar could talk to its master via telepathy. He's desperate to hear the details, but the bald man beside him stops him before he can act like a complete idiot. After apologizing for the guild master's hyperactivity, the bald man assures them that his skills are top-notch, so they have nothing to worry about. But the sad news is, they'll need a few more days to get the processed meat. So, Mukoda and the group wonder what they should do while they wait. To kill time, Mukoda comes up with a simple yet effective idea. Cook some insanely delicious dishes for his pets. He quickly orders ingredients from the online supermarket and starts by heating up a strange pan, called a Jingisukan pan, also known as a Genghis Khan pan. What the heck? What a weird name, but whatever. Mukoda arranges vegetables around the rim before placing the meat in the center. He then adds the sauce, and after just 10 minutes of cooking, the next level Genghis Khan mutton is ready to serve. I wonder if you get the runs from this. Phil doesn't like veggies and initially only wants the meat, but after Mukoda begs, he reluctantly takes a bite and falls in love at first sight. Both Dora and Sui also slurp up their portions and demand another serving because it seems they can't get enough after an hour of non-stop combat with the stove. Mukoda finally gets a break. He pulls out a box of crackers he ordered specially for himself as dessert, and once again, all 3 pets run over to beg, sensing that their servant is hiding some tasty snacks. Guess I have to share a little. Mukoda looks happy, but deep down, he's still a bit sad about having to share this with his little troublemakers. He then has a very long night because the little rascals keep making a ruckus. They are all wide awake like kids on a caffeine high, and it makes him feel helpless. Despite his exhaustion, Mukoda still finds his way to the guild the next day. He wonders if Elrond is finished with the earth dragon so they can have a proper feast. Mukoda meets Yugur at the counter and eagerly brings it up. Before Yugur can answer, Elrond suddenly appears, reporting with great clarity. The dude looks extremely hyped from staying up all night to complete his dragon research. However, being so engrossed in the masterpiece, this genius hasn't even started butchering it yet. This guy probably just spent the whole night measuring the dragon's dimensions. Elrond confirms that's partly true and leads them inside to process the dragon together. One has to admit, the dragon's scales are incredibly tough, and normal methods won't work. However, the guild master brings out the best knife they own and confidently says, "We can cut through the dragon with this VIP Pro knife." Unfortunately, when he smashes the knife against the scale, it immediately breaks in two without doing anything. Elrond is utterly disappointed that his action yielded no good results, and now they're down one treasure. But that's not even the biggest problem. The real issue is that the guild has no other knife capable of piercing the armor of this dragon. What to do? What to do? When Fel learns of this, he can't help but be shocked. So their trip was wasted over something so silly? Fel faints and begs him to at least find something else to try. Mukoda asks Yuger what they can do to solve this, and Yuger reveals one way. He suggests the only solution is to go into the dungeon to get more mithril ore, to forge a top-tier knife immediately. Fel, Sui, and Dora are over the moon with that brilliant idea. At least this gives them some hope of eating dragon meat the next day. The three eagerly tell Mukoda they can go into the dungeon right now, but he knows this is extremely dangerous. He reassures them, saying Elrond needs to rest after pulling an all-nighter. It's better to wait until Elrond is feeling better before continuing the conversation. He leads them outside, knowing his troublemakers are feeling very salty. Mukoda tries to explain that if they go into the dungeon and cause a scene, they'll immediately become the center of attention, which would affect their trip and prevent them from enjoying their delicious feast in peace. The pets reconsider the situation and decide to stay with their master for an easier life. Mukoda offers to make a full, nutritious meal for them, but since he's exhausted, he decides to prepare a quick and simple meal with ingredients on hand. After prepping, he gets to work on kimchi fried orc rice. He quickly serves his little troublemakers, and they seem very excited about the dish. The tension is finally resolved, but what about the dragon butchering problem? Meanwhile, the four goddesses are fuming because Mukoda has ghosted them on his monthly offerings. Since he's a gold mine, they have to keep it a secret and can't make a big deal out of it. But their complaints about Mukoda don't go unheard, quickly attracting the attention of two other gods. They ask if the four of them are intercepting offerings from a mortal. The goddesses, hearing this, try to defend their honor, claiming they were just gifts of gratitude and refusing to admit fault. Mukoda, sensing major trouble, kneels before the gods and speaks to them. He apologizes for not sending offerings, and asks the gods to calm down and resolve the situation peacefully. The two new gods finally notice Mukoda's existence. Vahan, the god of war, and Hephaestus, the god of smithing, strike up a conversation. Thinking of the god of smithing, Mukoda suddenly realizes he needs a better knife to cut the earth dragon meat. He tries to ask Hephaestus, but before he can finish, the old god reveals he knows what he needs. Hephaestus says he will bestow his blessing so the man can borrow his power to create the best knife. In return, he needs a few things. Knowing Mukoda can bring things from another world, they want to receive some high-quality liquor. He agrees to do it, and Hephaestus considers which pet his blessing would be compatible with. Looking around, Sui is the most suitable, so he quickly bestows his blessing on the slime. Vahan insists that he also wants to bless Mukoda, but the man quickly refuses, as he is not suited for this power. After some thought, Mukoda suggests blessing Fel and Dora, as they can help him clear dungeons. Vahan thinks that's fine and agrees. In return, Mukoda sends everything they wanted up to the heavens. The group sees they are no longer arguing, but the goddess of wind still warns him not to delay his offerings like he just did. Afterward, Mukoda checks Sui's stats and sees the little guy now has the epic smithing skill. However, without mithril, they might have to visit the dungeon. Fel reminds him that he killed a mithril lizard in the dungeon before. There might still be some ore from it in storage. Our main character suddenly remembers, and it turns out what Fel said is completely true. Giving the material to Sui, the slime immediately uses its skill to create a knife much better than the one that broke. But, wait a second, why did Fel know he still had mithril ore but insisted on going into the dungeon? Turns out, this old guy was just bored after days of not fighting monsters. As if being that battle-hungry wasn't enough, the god Vahan even buffed him with a 50% stat increase and enhanced his fighting spirit. Like this, who's gonna handle these two menaces now that they're even more battle-hyped? Mukoda returned to the guild to give Elrond the news, but when he walked in, he saw this elf god seemed to have lost his mind. According to Elrond's old assistant, he had been desperately searching for any blade sharper than the previous mithril knife, but had failed so miserably that he was on the verge of a mental breakdown. The good news was that Mukoda now had another mithril knife, and the god of smithing had promised its quality was definitely better than Elrond's old one. Elrond jumped up when he saw it and quickly ran to test if the new knife was any good, and as expected, this knife cut through the dragon's hide smoother than butter. Elrond couldn't believe its sharpness. He eagerly demanded Mukoda explain how he got such a godly item. Mukoda, of course, couldn't tell this old guy that he had just been shooting the breeze with the god of smithing and received his power, so he hesitated to answer. Not getting an answer, Elrond was still ecstatic as he got back to work and started processing the earth dragon. However, even with this godly knife, he would still need about 3 days to fully butcher it. Mukoda wondered what he would do in the meantime. He realized he would need a stronger and more epic stove to cook the earth dragon meat, and decided he would search for it on the online supermarket later. Fel couldn't believe he had to wait a few more days to eat dragon meat. He decided to kill time by exploring the dungeon because sitting around was boring as hell. He dashed towards the city gate, but Mukoda immediately stopped him and reminded him that it was impossible. But Fel didn't care. Dora also sighed. with Fel and eagerly declared that he wanted to see how much of a buff he got from the god of war's blessing. Mukoda still wasn't convinced, but when the adorable Sui also said she wanted to go into the dungeon for a round, he had no choice but to agree. Before they left, they needed to gather some information about the dungeon from the guild receptionist. According to her, adventurers usually take anywhere from 3 days to a whole month to fully explore a dungeon, depending on how many floors they clear. The dungeon here has a total of 30 floors, so she advised Mukoda to bring tons of food, so they wouldn't starve to death in there. She also noticed Mukoda wasn't wearing any gear. She sincerely advised him to get some proper kit first because there were many dangerous monsters living inside. Her advice and warnings made Mukoda realize he really wasn't prepared enough. So, he decided to cancel their dungeon exploration plans for now. All 3 familiars were not happy with their servant's dumb decision, but Mukoda was convinced he was right. He told them they didn't have enough food in his inventory. He had to prepare plenty of food. Before going in, the pets were pretty weak when it came to food, so they finally caved and followed Mukoda to the shopping district. Mukoda stopped in front of a street vendor and noticed there were many vegetables he needed, like carrots, onions, and cabbage. Everything was quite cheap, so he bought some vegetables along with a lot of spices. But when Mukoda tried to buy some monster meat, he was shocked because it turned out the meat here was sold at sky-high prices. After a whole season of living in this isekai world, this clueless dude finally realized he had been feasting on luxuries that 99% of the people in this world could never afford. After thinking it over, he decided to let his pets hunt their own monster meat, and the servant's job was just to buy a magic stove to cook the dragon meat for them. He hesitated a lot after hearing the price of the stove, but when Fel gave him a dirty look, Mukoda finally pulled the trigger. That evening, the master chef Mukoda prepared to cook a brand new recipe with the stove he just bought at the market. This time, he used 3 pots to cook gyudon with a side of rice. After struggling in the kitchen for a while, Mukoda finally served the new dish to his 3 royal masters, and as expected, this gyudon was to die for. The next morning, Mukoda decided to make enough food for at least 3 to 4 days in case they didn't have time to cook inside the dungeon. First up was braised or general pork. Then, he cooked some red boar stuffed cabbage rolls. The next item on the menu was a super simple shredded beef stir-fry with green peppers. With the 3 main dishes done, Mukoda continued to cook a few more. Fel, overcome with craving, started sniffing right next to the pile of food. Go on, sniff it. You want to end up in the pot with the tomato sauce after a whole day of struggling. In the kitchen, Mukoda finally finished 5 dishes, but sadly, he absolutely refused to let his familiars taste even a single bite. Cut to the next morning. Sui brought Mukoda a mithril sword that he had asked her to make. With his cowardly nature ingrained in his blood, I'm guessing this dude will just use it to chop onions or something. But it seemed Mukoda didn't even need to explore the dungeon because Elrond's assistant arrived to tell him that his boss had finished processing the earth dragon meat. The guy rushed to the guild master to get the meat. The pets were overjoyed because after so many days of waiting, they could finally have a feast of dragon meat. When Mukoda arrived and opened the door, he saw Elrond kneeling reverently before 2 vials of dragon blood he had collected. Elrond didn't know the main character's group was watching him with confusion. The deep red dragon's blood is the most wonderful thing in the world. Come on, dude. Stop being weird. Have you finished butchering it for us or what? When he noticed them, Elrond immediately said he had finished the processing. He revealed that the 3 days he spent processing the dragon were the best time of his life. It was truly fulfilling. After finishing the sorting, he decided he wanted to buy some of the products from the huge pile. Elrond brought out 2 vials of blood and asked to buy them. He said that dragon's blood was one of the most potent ingredients used to create an elixir that could cure all diseases. He also brought out 2 jars of marrow and explained its use was similar to dragon's blood. Finally, Elrond wanted to close the deal with a fang to create a legendary sword. Just that much was enough to satisfy him. With the stress Elrond had gone through processing the dragon, Mukoda had assumed he would definitely buy more. But why is this guy like guy only buying a few trinkets? Elrond revealed that even the things he bought were enough to bankrupt the entire guild's finances, as they were worth about 3,800 gold coins. This shocked Mukoda to his core, and his shock was even greater when Elrond brought out a bag of 380 large gold coins for the full payment. It was a sweet deal for Mukoda. The guy quickly counted the money and stored it in his safe. Then, Mukoda and his pets proceeded to put the other things produced from the dragon into his item box. The guild master had sorted and packed everything carefully. It was all organs and miscellaneous stuff, which made Fel impatient. It protested and asked about the meat because the only reason it was hanging around was for the dragon meat. Elrond announced that meat spoils the fastest, which is why he had stored it in the ice room to keep it fresh. He took them into the room, and there they could see a lot of frozen meat. Mukoda and his familiars immediately looted everything. Sui even created many clones to get the job done faster. While they were all working, Elrond asked if he would be allowed to enjoy some of the dragon meat with them. That was the original deal Mukoda had promised Elrond before he processed the Earth Dragon. So the guy didn't hesitate to agree. The moment he said yes, Elrond suggested they should go to his house to cook the grandest meal of their lives. Mukoda tried to protest that they could do it when they had more time. But Elrond and his familiars insisted that they should enjoy the dragon meat right now. When he stubbornly argued back, they tried to drag him into the village to get to Elrond's house. Wait a minute, isn't this your work hours? And don't you need to be at the guild until tonight, Elrond? The guy didn't care about that at all because, as the old saying goes, you can't work on an empty stomach. When they arrived at Elrond's house, Mukoda pulled out his oven, and Elrond admitted it was the newest model he had ever seen. Elrond also opened his item box and pulled out a strange-looking book. This was the first time Mukoda had seen someone in this world with a mobile item box like him. So, the guy expressed his amazement while Elrond tried to explain that as an elf, he knew all the skills of magic and had been a warrior for a long time, before becoming a guild master. Fed up with this guy's boasting, Mukoda decided to get straight to work. The guy quickly washed all the dragon meat. Then, Mukoda and his pets continued to peel onions and chop vegetables like pros. He took out the tray, placed the meat on it, and continued to cover it with lots of pre-cut vegetables. He drizzled some oil and herbs on top, and now all that was left was to roast it at the right temperature. The aroma of the meat immediately caught the attention of the 3 pets and 1 human. It looks so damn good, boss. Are we about to enjoy the legendary dragon meat yet? Just a few minutes later, the meal was done, and Mukoda was bringing it to the table. He used his skewer to confirm it was cooked through, then proceeded to share it with everyone. As they enjoyed their meal, the guy, after a hard day's work, also took a bite. With this first bite, he felt like an electric current ran through his entire body. The dragon meat was so amazing that it was better than all the meat he had ever tasted before. So this was the reason Fel was so insistent on eating dragon meat. Speaking of Fel, it was ecstatic because this was the first time in its life it got to enjoy the taste of processed dragon meat. It wished it had hunted about 3 earth dragons so they could have a lot more meat to enjoy to their heart's content. But Mukoda immediately shot that down because if they hunted too many, there would be no dragons left to eat. Fel, Sui, and Dora cleared their plates in a flash to ask for new servings before it was all gone. Mukoda also quickly served more. But when it was Dora's turn, the guy wondered, "Aren't you also a dragon? Isn't eating earth dragon meat the same as cannibalism?" But Dora corrected him that it belonged to a different species of dragon. Unless it ate a pixie dragon, it wasn't cannibalism. That sounds convincing enough. Oh, where's Elrond? It turned out, this godlike guy was crying his eyes out in a corner because he got to enjoy the most amazing thing in his life. Not only did he get to process a dragon with his own hands, but he also got to enjoy its meat to the fullest. For Elrond, this was better than going to heaven. Mukoda felt this guy was just overreacting. It's just one dragon. Why are you being so dramatic? They left Elrond's place and headed to their inn. On the way, Fel remarked that it felt so excited and full of energy that it could go into the dungeon and have a blast. The other 2 pets immediately agreed. Mukoda, witnessing this, felt helpless as he had no choice but to comply. But before they went into the dungeon for a long time, he needed to rest and make offerings to the gods to be safe on his journey. So, Mukoda started ordering a lot of items for them using his online supermarket skill. From meat and wine to sweets and cosmetics and perfume, he prepared everything without missing a thing. The gods, watching him do that, were extremely excited. The god of smithing suddenly had a thought and asked if anyone had given Mukoda a defensive skill. They had to protect Mukoda with all their might because if he died, it would also mean they would never get gifts from him again. The group immediately panicked and proposed to Mukoda that they would grant him an absolute defensive skill. But when the god of smithing mentioned this, Mukoda suddenly refused the offer. "How many times are you going to refuse my kindness? This time, you have to accept it whether you want to or not, because it's related to the number of offerings from the other world." The next day, he went to the guild to register with his familiars. When they got to the reception desk, he realized it was the same female staff member they had met in one of the previous cities. "It's Bianca again." He recognized her and asked why she was here. Bianca revealed the dungeon had been very busy lately, and whenever it got like that, guilds could request help from other guilds around. She looked at Fel shyly and confirmed that she was still as infatuated with him as the first day. Fel didn't care much. It was excited and dragged Mukoda away while Bianca watched in admiration. Bianca wrote a letter to her friend Michaela about the new guild, but what was more exciting was that she had met Fel again, and it still looked as amazing as ever. Mukoda and his crew finally arrived at the dungeon. Fel bragged that the first few floors were full of nothing but small fry. Most adventurers just grind from the 10th to the 15th floor to farm monsters for money. Treasure chests also drop more frequently. The monsters on the upper floors get stronger, but with his badass abilities, they were just a bunch of shrimps, not worth a dime. The moment he finished speaking, the whole crew hopped on Fel's back, transforming into the dog-snatching squad and warping straight down to the 10th floor. A mob of monsters that rushed out to block them was immediately rammed by Fel and wiped out instantly. The scene looked as if they'd been run over by a dump truck. While running at full speed, Fel suddenly stepped on a trap and a spear shot out, straight towards them, just as it was about to skewer Mukoda's face. A wind wall was instantly erected, saving the guy from a clear defeat. Mukoda was baffled. Wait, aren't dungeons formed naturally? How can there be man-made traps here? Fel explained that the dungeon is like a living organism. It lures people in with countless rewards, then ambushes them with traps and high-level monsters with the main goal of eliminating them. The corpses are then absorbed as nutrients to sustain the place itself. The traps they saw were like its arms and legs. While they were chatting, a barrage of arrows kept flying at them. They couldn't actually penetrate Fel's defenses, but Mukoda on his back was scared shitless. Having gone this far, he had to see it through. He forced himself to go along with the chaotic crew, but a sense of unease was still written all over his face. Finally, they reached the 10th floor. Fel said this floor was also full of wimps, not even enough for them to warm up. The floor boss was a poisonous spider from the tarantula family. The party had to run to the zone and get to the boss room immediately. When they arrived, they saw a group of adventurers waiting outside. Seeing Fel approach, they thought he was a bloodthirsty monster that wanted to eat them all. But Mukoda quickly apologized and explained that they weren't monsters, and their main purpose for being there was also to hunt the boss. One of the adventurers was surprised to learn it was Mukoda's first time in a dungeon. He explained the unwritten rules of the place. The team that attacks first gets priority to defeat the boss, and the loot naturally belongs to that team. All teams that arrive later are not allowed to interfere, unless they're asked to. The person who opens a treasure chest also gets first dibs on the items. Mukoda asked if there was a team inside. The adventurers said yes, they had to wait their turn. He was just giving a heads up because some inconsiderate people tend to ignore the rules and just want to kill steal. After a few hours of waiting, Mukoda's pets, bored out of their minds, suggested they go inside just to take a look. But Mukoda advised them to follow the rules. The adventurers emerged with their loot and told Mukoda they didn't dare to go further because they had wives and kids waiting at home. Risking their lives on the higher floors really wasn't worth it. Mukoda and his crew. What wives and kids? They went inside immediately and the door slammed shut behind them. When Mukoda saw the boss, he panicked and yelled for help, and Baby Dragon Door used its fire breath to one-shot the spider. For Mukoda, it was an easy job with high paid. All he had to do was collect all the loot. There were a lot of powerful items, and he even found ingredients to craft a miracle potion. They proceeded to the next floor and saw an entire tribe of giant orcs. Baby Dragon Dora-chan once again cleaned house. Afterwards, Dora reported that it was getting hungry from using too much mana. Baby Slime Sui felt the same. Fel suggested the party find an empty room to stop for a meal and some rest. They entered the safe room and realized the place was like a resort for many adventurers. Suddenly, the Ironwool mercenary group appeared and greeted Mukoda. He immediately recognized them as a team that had helped him escape the kingdom of Rieshseger in the early days. The leader said they had just arrived in the city the day before and started climbing the tower yesterday. He asked if Mukoda had tamed any other pets. Isn't that just a baby dragon? Mukoda explained that this was a fully grown pixie dragon named Dora-chan. He also introduced Sui, a super VIP pro-level slime. The group then played together and seemed to have a great time. After a while, they were all starving, and Mukoda had to bring out his gear and show off his cooking skills. He said he would prepare food for the adventurer group, and they would all enjoy this feast together. The group agreed in a snap. Everyone gathered around, creating an incredibly warm and cozy scene. Then, the pink-haired girl took out a few loaves of black bread to contribute to the feast. Mukoda was surprised and declared it was definitely a high-class food item. Perhaps we should eat it with something that pairs best with this. He took out his gas stove to heat up the food, and while waiting, he cut the bread into small slices. Everything was ready. The meat curry with black bread was officially served. Everyone sat down to eat after finishing their prayer ritual. With the first bite, they felt the curry was so delicious they were floored. Eating one piece after another, the adventurers said, "This is the first time we've tasted meat that just melts the moment it enters your mouth. And the flavor is so rich and deep, too. It really brings out the sweetness of the vegetables." This man was so moved he started crying. Never expecting to taste Mukoda's food again, this is officially the best plate of curry in the world. Everyone kept praising the food, making our main character blush. When they were almost finished, they had a sudden thought and asked what kind of meat it was. Mukoda calmly replied that it was all wyvern meat. The adventurers were so shocked they looked like they wanted to cough it all back up. "You're treating us to something so precious?" The main character told them not to worry because he had plenty more in his bag. When Fel and Sui get to work, even a wyvern is just a fly. Everyone felt relieved after hearing that. In that case, we won't be polite anymore. Another full plate, boss. Mukoda was truly happy. He told them to eat to their heart's content because there was still a lot of meat left in the pot. After they were full, the leader, as he was leaving, reminded Mukoda to be more careful in the dungeon. He and his members planned to explore this floor a bit more. The groups parted ways there, and Mukoda had to hit the road again with his 3 troublemakers. On the 16th floor, Mukoda felt the atmosphere was completely different from the 15th. The big boss wolf explained that all dungeons are like that. They constantly change, taking you from one surprise to another. Just as he finished his sentence, the troublemaker fell stepped on another trap. An earthquake immediately occurred, making Mukoda turn pale with fear. A large boulder suddenly rolled towards them. The cowardly driver scrambled to find a place to hide, ignoring the emperor, who could only stare blankly. Fell told him to calm down because one blast would solve everything. You're with me, and you're still this scared. I don't even know what to do with you, man. After a long journey, they had now set foot on the 20th floor. While wandering, Dora-chan struck up a conversation, asking if Mukoda was surprised by its power. Mentioning it just brought back bitter memories of that old geezer, the god of war. Everything was fine until he suddenly appeared and buffed the two monsters with a ton of stats. They became more and more aggressive, forcing our main character to painfully tag along and serve them. Fell cut in and said they had to get to the final floor quickly, so he suddenly called everyone over him, saying there was something very suspicious in a deep pit. When Mukoda looked back, what caught his eye was a massive treasure chest. He rushed over him, excited to check it out since treasure chests are a crucial part of dungeons. Mukoda never expected this place to be so captivating. Before he could open it, Fell stopped him and said he'd already told him that dungeons lure people in with the glamour of treasure. It's better to observe it first before deciding whether to open it or not. Mukoda proceeded to appraise it and discovered it was just a trap. It was designed to release a poisonous gas. If he inhaled it, he would be wiped out instantly. Mukoda collapsed to the ground, saying the dungeon was truly too cruel. Since the servant was insisting on opening the chest, Fell offered to do it for him. At least he was quite tough after receiving all those blessings from the gods. Then, the familiar voice of Fenrir echoed, explaining to Mukoda about the small blessings she had granted. Thanks to the overlapping blessings from the goddesses, it had evolved to be on par with a normal blessing. It's very rare for 3 goddesses to bless the same person. This means he wouldn't get sick and the poison gas couldn't affect him. Now, stop being down and go enjoy this dungeon. Mukoda stood up and told Fell that he now possessed a proper blessing. If Fenrir said so, then it must be true. Mukoda walked towards the chest, and when he opened it, a large amount of poison gas spewed out. But he was completely unharmed, seeing that there wasn't a single treasure inside. The guy was disappointed and quickly went to find another chest. They later saw a giant chest. Mukoda was very excited, wanting to unbox it immediately. As he approached it, a screen appeared, informing Mukoda that the chest was a perfectly disguised monster. The main character was furious. Fell advised that it was best not to open it, but with its size, it could very well be hiding a ton of good stuff inside. Drawing his sword for protection, the guy was determined to open this chest at all costs. Suddenly, an ugly monster burst out and attacked him. Mukoda fought back with a flurry of slashes before realizing it was already dead. A few seconds later, a small chest suddenly appeared. He opened it and saw a lot of jewelry inside. Well, at least it was some consolation prize. The group moved on together to the next floor. They then descended to a new area and saw a vast, immense space. A huge farce inside this god-forsaken dungeon. Fell asked Mukoda to ride on his back because he sensed something relatively strong. They quickly rushed in until they ran into a swarm of giant mantises, facing the big boss wolf. This type was still too young and green. Just one Cambodian-style electric shock and the whole lot was well done. Mukoda was horrified by that power. Dora and Sui immediately got annoyed because Fell had single-handedly defeated them all. You should have waited for us to handle them together, you old geezer. Fell said it didn't matter because the dungeon boss was still inside. Seeing the troublemaker squad getting tense, Mukoda quickly stepped in to assign roles. How about each of you takes a turn dealing with a wave of monsters? That way, everyone's happy, right? Sounds okay to me, old man. The 3 of them nodded at Mukoda's suggestion. They continued into the forest and repeatedly defeated monsters. The troublemakers also kept their promise, taking turns showcasing their power. However, the final boss that Fell sensed had yet to appear. Well, might as well just charge straight in and see where it's hiding. The big boss wolf was certain they were very close to the boss. Mukoda got too scared and suggested they stop to fill their stomachs. He actually just wanted to buff up his power, to ensure his pets could absolutely protect him. It wasn't that the opponent was so strong they had to do this, but if the servant was offering, the pets had no choice but to say yes. They sat down to prepare for a snack. Mukoda planned to make steak like last time, with premium Wagyu beef and basic ingredients. It would be fine. He also ordered some pre-marinated sausages and bacon on the side. There was black pepper roast duck and yakitori. Oh, and I have to order some sandwiches to eat with the troublemakers too. This was definitely the most complete snack I've ever seen. Mukoda served his pets while also making some food for himself. In a flash, the 3 troublemakers had licked their plates clean. Fell quickly asked for another serving because he never gets tired of this stuff. Dora-chan shared. This is my first time eating just 1 plate, but it was really delicious. Sui was full of praise. Mukoda felt his heart warm after hearing this. After the meal, he checked all his pet stats, starting with Fell. He announced that this power was more than enough to defeat all the monsters. Looking over at Dora-chan, it was so full it couldn't even stand up. Sui's stats had also doubled, but when he looked at himself, he realized how pathetic he was. Well, of course, we do all the work fighting the monsters. How are you supposed to level up? Now get up and let's go hunt some monsters. While the crew was wandering around the dungeon looking for the boss, they suddenly ran into a super-duper giant monster. Mukoda immediately used appraisal and freaked out when he found out it was an S-rank monster. Fel recognized this sucker, saying it was a basilisk and that he'd soloed it back in the day. Suddenly, a notification popped up in front of Mukoda about the monster's poison ability, which could get him wiped out in just 5 seconds. This scared Mukoda out of his mind. He asked Fel if he'd really fought this thing before. Big Boss Fel confirmed he had a healing spell, so as long as he dodged its bite and its squeeze, he'd be fine. Dora, on the other hand, was super hyped, declaring the snake a worthy opponent. When Mukoda saw Sui wanted to have a go too, he had no choice but to let them. And so, we see our boy duck behind a tree. When everything was ready, the trio attacked in unison. Fel unleashed electricity, Sui spat acid, and Dora pierced its chest with a crazy powerful attack. After taking down the snake, the three of them celebrated like there was no tomorrow, while our main character was still standing there, jaw on the floor. Afterwards, they found a portal to the next floor. As soon as they activated it, they were instantly teleported to a massive tunnel. Mukoda didn't like this, but Fel said there was an open area up ahead. The four of them went to check it out and were shocked to see a Minotaur and a few orcs guarding the floor. Without wasting any time, the chaotic trio charged in again. After walking until their legs ached, the three eating machines complained they were hungry, so they found a safe spot. Once they did, our main character announced it was time to cook, and everyone helped prepare. Sui laid out the blanket, Mukoda took out the food, and Fel checked if it was still good. They started chowing down, and after 3 relentless rounds of eating, everyone was stuffed. Mukoda said it was best for them to rest there for the day. Fel agreed. And while Mukoda was about to chat some more, a group of adventurers appeared. With their injured comrade, the knight asked Mukoda if he had a healing potion. Our clueless protagonist immediately took a potion from his item box and gave it to the knight. The knight used the potion on his companion, and the wound vanished. Instantly, all of them were shocked and asked if it was a special potion. Turning to look at our main character, so Mukoda, a bit shaky, replied that it was just a high-quality potion, but its effect was stronger than a normal one. After that, he asked about their companion's condition, and the knight said that although he hadn't woken up, his wound was gone and his breathing was stable. The man introduced them as Tempest and a rank adventurer party. To thank him, he offered to pay him 500 gold coins. Mukoda initially refused, but due to the man's insistence, he accepted. But before that, he gave them a few more low-quality potions and asked him to recount what had happened. The man told them with a grimace that in the boss room of that floor, there were 3 Spriggans. Hearing this, Mukoda asked Fel via telepathy if those monsters were dangerous. Fel replied that they were even bigger than Minotaurs, which gave Mukoda an idea. The guy continued his story, saying this was their second time in this dungeon. The first time they scouted it, they confirmed there was only one, so they went back to make a plan. But on their comeback, things didn't go as expected. He added that even though the dungeon changes daily, they never expected it to pull such a hard 180. But he figured this would probably be small fry for our main character, since he had such a stacked lineup of pets. Afterwards, they ended their conversation and said they would rest first and return to the surface the next day. But our main character was a bit worried, and Fel used telepathy to calm him down, saying that no matter how many Spriggans were there, they were no match for him. So, he told him to go to sleep. The next day, we see them heading to the boss room, leaving the Tempest group behind to enjoy their meal. Then, Dora said they had arrived at the boss room from the entrance. Mukoda noticed 3 giant monsters guarding the way. Our protagonist was terrified, but his 3 companions showed no fear and immediately annihilated the monsters. In just a few seconds, the head of one of the monsters flew in front of Mukoda, and he saw the insane speed at which they took it down. He realized how incredibly lucky he was to have them on his side as he got closer to the monsters' corpses. He saw a magic bag and unconsciously started picking up the scattered gemstones on the floor. But as he did, he thought to himself how opportunistic he was, as if all he did was loot stuff. At that moment, Big Boss Fel used his keen sense of smell to remind him that the next floors were golden territory. Mukoda, now hyped up, declared that next time it would be his turn to flex, since he had the absolute defense skill. After all, we see him standing in the middle of a horde of orcs, getting punched repeatedly but taking no damage thanks to his shield. Because the sight was so boring, Dora decided to intervene and incinerated the monsters. They continued descending floors until they reached the 28th. When Fel stepped on the portal, they were immediately yeeted into a desert world. While Mukoda was complaining about the heat, the trio was incredibly motivated. But less than half an hour later, they also started complaining about how hot it was. We see Sui almost evaporating, and Dora spotted a shady spot. They immediately ran there to take cover and rest. Mukoda bought clothes and water from the online supermarket, and we see Sui's body return to normal after drinking. He then bought ice cream and Fel, without hesitation, immediately started devouring it while praising how sweet and soft it was. Unlike Ice. After finishing, it continued walking with the ice cream still in its mouth. Surrounded by sand, Mukoda asked Fel if it knew where they were going. The big boss wolf told him not to worry, as it was tracking a presence. And we see them fighting a giant scorpion. After resting again, they fought and defeated a sandworm. When night fell, they camped in an open area. Since it was freezing, Mukoda decided to buy some items like thermal patches and a thick sweatshirt. And to make the evening great, he suggested they eat something hot, of course. Fel and the others were delighted, so Mukoda started cooking. He poured water into the pot, then sauces, ingredients, and after it boiled, he added the udon noodles. He added more components, and a short while later, the rockbird meat udon hot pot was ready. After the delicious meal, Mukoda and the group felt they were close to the floor's boss. So, they decided to rest to regain their strength. The next morning, after defeating an earth golem, they reached the portal leading to the boss room. There, they faced a behemoth, an absurdly huge monster, who was the final boss of the dungeon. Dora and Sui were the first to attack, but their attacks were ineffective. Fel explained that the monster had a nearly impenetrable defense, and only one powerful attack could break through it, while Mukoda was hiding. Fel led the battle and ordered Dora and Sui not to stop attacking. Slowly, they injured the monster, especially when Dora used ice magic and Sui used acid furious. The behemoth fired an energy beam straight at Mukoda, but Fel protected him by putting up an ice wall just in time. And while the monster's armor was weakened by the acid, Fel charged up a massive lightning bolt, a thunder version of a Kamehameha, and unleashed it straight at the behemoth's wound, completely defeating it. After its body vanished, Mukoda saw a magic sword called Cadbook. Made of adamantite, he decided to keep it, and Fel, hungry as always, ordered that they had to eat before going back. So, Mukoda, with no other choice, prepared a huge celebratory feast with fried chicken, skewers, and corn dogs. And the three companions happily enjoyed their banquet, while Mukoda felt happy seeing their joy. Meanwhile, Werner and his group were celebrating in a tavern after reaching the 12th floor, and they were talking about how amazing it would be to eat with Mukoda around. Franca suggested they should invite him to their party, but even as they considered it, they ultimately didn't go through with the idea, even though their stomachs were rumbling.